What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Fringe. Mark Carney is under a lot of pressure these days because, as you've seen during the debates during the federal election, he often made the excuse, hey, listen, I've only been here for a month. Cut me some slack, everybody. I should have time to adjust to my wonderful position of being prime minister. I should just have the cushy life while I jet off to Rome, while I do all these other things. Cut me some slack. I want to live like Justin Trudeau. Well, recently, Mark Carney announced that there was going to be no budget, that he wasn't going to produce a budget. Why? Why have a budget? Why push a budget when we can just spend, and people will turn a blind eye to what we're doing because they won't actually have any understanding of what's happening to the deficit, any idea or understanding as to what's happening with taxes, while he sits around signing fake executive orders like Donald Trump, which again do nothing in this country. That's not how things work in this country. I find it so hilarious how he steals Pierre Poilievre's platform, how he steals from Donald Trump, and yet Canadians cheer him on, despite the fact that he emulates Donald Trump by trying to sign executive orders. You think all those with Trump derangement syndrome who voted Mark Carney in would be upset that he's trying to sign orders like Donald Trump. That's my little rant, but let's get on to what's happened now, because Mark Carney has caved. He's caved. With all the pressure mounting, he has to produce a budget. Canadians have said, why no budget, Mark? We want a budget. Well, he's come out and said, we'll have a much more comprehensive, effective, ambitious, prudent budget in the fall. You do these things right, Mark Carney tells the media at a news conference in Rome as he responds to questions on his government's intention to table its first budget in autumn. The reason he didn't want this budget is because things are in the toilet and they're not getting any better. There have been many articles citing recession. Again, I had a video out yesterday talking about how Mark Carney silently removed almost all of the dollar for dollar tariffs, aside from the ones on essential goods like food, clothing, etc. And again, some people had said, hey, that's not what the article said. The one article showed, let me clarify that. The one article that we showed and talked about showed that food, clothing, and other necessary goods of living were still a part of those tariffs. Canadians pay for those tariffs. While another article from Loblaws said that tariff-related items were set to triple in the coming months, meaning your food, your clothing, necessities are potentially headed for triple the price. These are the reasons Mark Carney doesn't want a budget. Let's take a look to what Mr. had to say as he doled out what Canadians have been looking for from the start.
There'll be a budget in the fall. In the short term, it's a very short parliamentary session that is coming up. The speech from the throne is on the 27th, as people know. The House is due to rise under the House's rules by the 20th of June, so it's really 3 weeks. We have some very clear priorities, which, as you know, from following those who followed the campaign, those who followed my remarks, those who followed my opening press conference, would include the federal government taking all the steps it can to help create one Canadian economy out of 13, in addition, initiatives such as the middle class tax cut. But there will be a budget in the fall.
Abigail Beeman, CTV News.
Yep.
To that point, with your economic experience as a former governor of two central banks,
Yep.
Why not present Canadians with a budget at the very first opportunity?
Well, this is in fact based on my economic experience. There is not much value in my judgment, and it's considered judgment, and it's judgment based on experience, that there is not much value in trying to rush through a budget in a very narrow window, 3 weeks, with a new cabinet, effectively a new finance minister, just reappointed, but a new finance minister, rush that through, for example, in advance of the NATO summit, which happens after Parliament rises. So the NATO summit, 23rd, 24th, that is going to be a very important event for the security of Canada, but also it will have fiscal implications. It will have budgetary implications.
So Mark trying to make excuses as to why he doesn't have a budget, why he's waiting. And what's funny is that you have a lot of liberal voters who sit and back this, who say, oh yeah, we don't need a budget. It's okay. Mark's a banker. Mark knows all about this. I don't know if everybody paid attention to Liz Truss and her warning during Trump's inauguration that This guy actively destroyed England. He'll do the same to Canada. What's funny is he's already doing it. This tweet comes out during the same press conference. Prime Minister Mark Carney asked yes or no if he wants house prices to go down. Says it's not a yes or no question, adding that the question is layered, and explains how the feds are aiming to build homes and lower costs. This was the same argument I had about Pierre Poilievre when things were going on. Yeah, we want to clear red tape. We want to build the homes. The problem isn't the fact that there is a lack of homes. In fact, if you look in cities like Toronto, there are a mass amount of apartment-style condominiums available. The problem isn't the fact that there's nowhere for people to live. It is the cost of people being able to get into said places. People can't afford $800,000 for a condominium. Now, the biggest problem is that 30% roughly of the country own homes or have a mortgage. And if you were to suddenly come in and deteriorate the value of those homes, those people would walk away from their mortgages. If you suddenly took, let's say, $1 million home in Toronto and reduced its value to $500,000, and somebody just bought a house in Toronto 2 months ago at $1 million, do you think they're going to sit there and pay for that? Do you think they're going to sit there and say, oh, I'll just keep this $1 million mortgage over my head where I'm struggling, where I can't make things? Or do you think they're going to go file for bankruptcy? Do you think they're going to walk away from their mortgage? That's the problem that's being presented. In fact, our housing minister has even said that he backs that claim that, oh, there's no reason for the prices to go down. We'll just build more. It's all about supply and demand. While overabundance in supply can sometimes trigger prices to change, prices to fluctuate, with the cost of building materials these days, with the greed that comes from real estate developers, they just sit on these properties. And I'm seeing it in the town where I'm living. I'm seeing it around my area that houses are sitting. Nobody's buying them, and the prices aren't changing. And if they do, it's by very, very little. Let's take a look at what Mark had to say about homes.
No, there. We did hear yes or no from Gregor Robertson, though. He said no. So where do you stand on that?
Well, it's not a, first off, it's not a yes-no question. It's not a yes-no question.
It was for him, though.
Well, I'm answering the questions right now, if I can. Because it's a question which relates to different time horizons, and it relates to different houses.
So what Mark is doing here, again, for anybody who's missed it, he's deflecting. This is a common business tactic where you take what somebody is saying and you reverse it back on them. That, hey, it's not just such a simple question. Let me explain to you in word salad for the next 5 minutes why your question is obsolete, why it doesn't hold any weight, why you need to be specific. And it all buries around the fact that I can't be honest with you because you're not going to enjoy what I have to say. It's all deflection. Let's continue.
So we are cutting GST on new homes. Okay. So that affects the price.
Wait, did you guys hear that? Sorry to keep cutting in. Did you hear that? We're cutting the GST on new homes. Who was going to do that originally? I don't know. I don't think it was Mark Carney. Oh, wait, Pierre. Pierre was going to do that.
Of new homes. That affects the cost, is a better way to put it. The all-in cost for people. It's up to $50,000 savings on the average home price. A little more than that, actually, if you look at the greater Toronto area. So there's significant savings for people. Measures to reduce development charges over the course of the next 5 years. For the next 5 years, cut those development charges in half. Those lower the cost for those homes that are built over the course of the next 5 years. Those savings will be passed on to people.
So I'm going to cut off his word salad, and I'm going to tell you right now that those savings will not be passed on to people. How do I know this? How does the Fringe know this? Well, let's break it down for you. I will use Calgary as a benchmark because I grew up in Calgary. I lived in Calgary for 30 years, from my teens until I was an adult, and in the early 2000s, my folks bought a home. It was considered semi-estate home, an average 2,000 square foot home. And at that time, the house was roughly $215,000. It was in a lake community, very gorgeous house. And they thought at the time, in 2001, I believe it was, when they purchased that home, that the house was expensive. $225,000 Very expensive for a home. However, shortly after they moved in, there was a material shortage in Calgary. There was no concrete. There was a lack of lumber. Houses weren't being built. You had an influx of people moving from cities like Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, where houses were already at that time approaching the $1 million mark. They were selling their homes and moving to more affordable provinces. There was also a business boom going on in Calgary at that time. My folks' neighbor had his house on the market at I think it was roughly $220,000. It had sat for quite some time, no interest. He dropped his realtor, and as my folks were moving into their house, I was there assisting with some things about 3 days after their move. And we were on the front porch, and my father, he makes friends easily. He was talking with the neighbor, and he said a realtor just came over, a new realtor. He says that I had to sell the house at $330,000, so $100,000 roughly more than I had listed at. And if it wasn't gone by the end of the weekend, he would buy it out at full list value. My father and I couldn't believe what he was talking about because my folks had just bought their house at $215,000. This guy couldn't sell at $220,000. And now he's told $330,000. The realtor was outside later that day moving from car to car to car, taking bids on the property. And that was when we realized there was a material shortage. My folks' investment on their house shot up $100,000 overnight. Now, over the course of the next few months, homes in Calgary shot up to roughly $400,000. That was the average at that time. And I started to panic. Myself, Mrs. Fringe, we said, hey, houses now doubled. We can't afford to get one now. We were saving, but you only needed about $10,000 to buy a house. Now we needed 20, 25. And we said, well, it's going to take forever for us to save for that. It took us a while just to put away $10,000 with the rent we were paying. My old man said, don't worry about it. As soon as the materials come back, houses will become more affordable. Just as Mark's saying here, I know it's a long rant, it's a long story, but it's to show the clarity here. As soon as those materials come back, the housing prices will come down because they won't be able to sell the houses they've got. They'll have an overabundance of supply, kind of like in Toronto, where they have an overabundance of supply of condo-style apartments. Now, when the materials came back, the builders, the home builders, looked at the pre-lived-in market. The home builders looked and said, those houses are worth $400,000. So our houses are worth $400,000. And everything kind of just sat until people stopped bidding and the prices never came down. In fact, they kept rising. They kept going up. All these builders thought that their houses were worth so much more, and they've never adjusted. They have never adjusted. Cities like Toronto, over $1 million. Vancouver, over $1 million. Now, Vancouver's a different game because of Chinese money laundering. But what the point of all of this is that when Mark Carney says, hey, we're cutting red tape, we're lowering the costs for builders. Well, the builders aren't going to say, oh, they lowered our costs by $50,000. Let's take the house down by $50,000. No, they're going to say that's an extra profit for us. They're going to take their profits. No business became wealthy by giving away money. So for anybody who thinks that what Mark Carney is talking about is going to change the real estate market, it's either going to stay the same or it's going to get worse. There's no hope for the younger generation to buy a home at this point. Unless, of course, they live with their parents for multiple years, save their money, and somehow get in or wait for their parents to pass away and inherit their property. This is the reasons Mark Carney didn't have a budget. These are the reasons why Mark Carney does not want to put a budget forward. You remember Crystia Freeland stepping down because of Justin Trudeau's budget? Mark Carney's is set to introduce $300 billion over the next 4 years in deficit. He's not looking forward to this budget. I'm not sure how he's going to twist this around, but I will be here whenever it be in the fall, whether it's early fall, late fall, whenever he decides to discuss his budget and criticize, because it's going to be full of criticism, I can assure you that. Let me know what you guys think down below. Do you believe Mark Carney? Do you believe houses are going to come down in price? Do you think things are going to become more affordable for you and that he's going to wait until NATO and all these other things to put forward a proper balanced budget? The budget will balance itself, folks. Let me know what you think down below. If it's your first time here, I hope this video has earned your subscription. Again, I apologize for the long story, but I feel that it sheds some light onto how these things work, so that people understand that when the government says, we're going to build the homes, we're going to make things more affordable, all they're going to do is extend the terms of your mortgage to try and bring down the price while bending you over saying, hey, we saved you some money. Let me know your thoughts down below. If it's your first time here, I hope this video has earned your subscription. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. You're turning on the bell for all notifications so that you don't miss a beat anytime new videos drop on this channel. Make sure to join me live here on the channel each and every Friday night for Friday Night Fringe, our weekly live streaming show, where I'm joined by the beautiful Mrs. Fringe as we go back and forth throughout the most amazing community on the platform while discussing everything in politics, to hear what you have to say. I look forward to hearing what you have to say each and every Friday night in those live streams outside of making these videos, but I most importantly look forward to hearing what you have to say this Friday night, starting at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, here on the channel. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.